Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Lawcast. This time, we're going back to cover the night the Beast came back. It's the night Brock Lesnar came home to WWE. It's Extreme Rules 2012. Cush, take yourself back 8 years, almost to this day. What were you feeling when Brock Lesnar came back to WWE?
It's so hard to remember that time before because this has been the Lesnar era ever since this moment. Brock Lesnar has warped and defined the entire concept of WWE ever since. But back then, I wasn't a big UFC guy. I followed him in it. So I was aware of everything that he had done there, but Brock Lesnar had largely kind of fallen out of my purview. Like, after he did what he did in New Japan, and most Japanese wrestling fans swore him off as a piece of shit for the rest of his life, like I wasn't really paying attention. So when the rumors started to fly that Lesnar was coming back, I didn't really know how to feel about it. Like I wasn't excited per se, but when the segment happens that he does return, I, I changed my mind in like 10 seconds. Like the way he was brought back was so phenomenally perfect that it made a fan of me overnight.
I was really fired up. I mean, I was a big Brock fan in WWE. I mean, I've never been that big of a UFC fan, but followed his UFC career. But for me, it was always just like, okay, when's he like? We know he's coming back. Like
He's got to.
he's not gonna not wrestle again. Like we know this guy likes to make money. Like he's not gonna be able to do real fights forever. So at some point, he's gonna come back and do the predetermined stuff. And turned out it was 2012, and we'll get into that, but. WWE is really riding high. They're coming off WrestleMania 28, which is the biggest pay-per-view they ever did. The Rock's return to WrestleMania after an 8-year absence. He made a triumphant return in his hometown of Miami, beat John Cena in the main event. And then they have something even bigger the next night when Brock Lesnar comes back to the company after an 8-year absence. That was the culmination of years of negotiations. To recap, he left in 2004 to play professional football. That didn't work out. He was cut from the Minnesota Vikings, and he was left trying to figure out how he could make a living. He had signed a super restrictive non-compete agreement to get out of his WWE contract. He couldn't do wrestling, boxing, or MMA for 7 years. So in order to test this non-compete agreement, he signs that deal with New Japan because he has to be able to show, that they're depriving him of his right to make a living to be able to sue them. They go at it in court, and at one point, him and WWE actually agree on a return. That's like 2005 or 2006, I think. It's not that long after he left. They made a preliminary agreement for him to come back. And then apparently they asked him to take a pay cut from what he had been making, claiming he was no longer as valuable as he had been. And he backed out.
Now, see, that's just pettiness too, isn't it?
Like, he's obviously going to be their top star if he comes back. We know this.
But they feel like, well, now you don't have shit going for you, so you come crawling the fuck back.
Yeah. And they don't want to pay him more than they're paying, I don't know, Triple H and under to whoever the top paid guys are at that point.
Right. But that would have been such a good time for him to come back. They didn't have shit going on then.
Yeah. And him to get to work with, we never got him and Batista. And that seems like an awesome match to me.
Like him versus peak Edge. We never got Lesnar Edge. We got Lesnar Orton long after anyone would have given a shit about it.
So instead, he goes to work for New Japan, before the case is even settled, but I think it had become clear, WWE was not going to win. No judge in the world was going to uphold this non-compete agreement. So he makes a deal with New Japan where he gets paid $50,000 each match, limited dates. New Japan immediately puts the IWGP title on him. But then it turns out nobody in Japan cares about him. His matches don't draw. What was the deal there?
It was the ghost of Enochiism. So, here you have maybe the most credible guy you can possibly get your hands on. So it was destiny that he would get the belt. The ironic thing is that they had just started to launch into this new era that they were going to build entirely around Shinsuke Nakamura. And like he was the son of strong style. He was going to carry the torch into the new generation. And they basically just had Lesnar job him the fuck out.
Yeah.
And then Lesnar comes in and they put the belt on him. And then it turns out he refuses to do a job to lose the belt to anybody.
Yeah, I think they try to cut his pay and he just says like, no, like our deal is 50 grand a match, like pay me my money and I'll lose. But they didn't want to pay him, so he didn't show up.
But it was more than that too. Like, and he was using the belt as leverage to be like, no, you got to pay me this much money or I'm not going to come job the belt out. Like, it's just not going to happen like that.
He left the promotion with the title. Eventually, he lost a match to Kurt Angle where Angle won like the physical belt, but New Japan had already crowned a new champion by that point.
Yes, Antonio Inoki, who had been ousted by his own company, started another fringe company called the Inoki Genome Federation just to promote this one match so he could fraudulently put the belt on another MMA guy.
Ooh, how'd that TNA New Japan working agreement work out?
One day we're going to have an excuse to talk about that in depth, and I'm going to vent my fucking guts about it.
Okay, so pro wrestling not looking so promising at this point. He's burned his bridges in America and Japan, so kind of the only thing left for him is mixed martial arts, and this goes way better than I think anyone could have dreamed.
I think we all thought it was going to be a joke, like CM Punk was, basically.
Yeah, I mean, CM Punk hasn't happened at this point, but yeah, I don't think anybody was like, even though, yeah, he's an NCAA champion, but UFC's different, and it's been so many years since he had done amateur wrestling. I don't think anybody was like, oh, yeah, this guy's going to be the champion. But he was.
Yeah, and for me, the ghost of Inokiism had convinced me that wrestlers can't fight. Like, it convinced me exactly the opposite of what Inoki wanted me to believe. Just like wrestlers can't do it on that stage, man. It's impossible. Instead, he goes in there against Randy Couture and fucking owns his ass.
Yeah, so he has one professional fight, and then UFC signs him. His first UFC fight, he takes on UFC legend and former heavyweight champion Frank Mir. This is kind of a weird fight where Lesnar loses in like 90 seconds, but everybody comes out of the fight impressed with him. Even the most like diehard UFC, like anti-pro wrestling, that guy doesn't belong here fan, like was stunned by how good Lesnar looked as he just came out and like immediately took Mir down and kicked his ass. And then he got caught in a leg bar, which is just like the kind of thing that can happen to a rookie fighter when they're up against a veteran. But like, even though Lesnar tapped out in 90 seconds here, everybody was like, okay, if that fight had lasted another 30 seconds, he was going to knock Mir out.
Yeah, just the physical domination that he put on Mir was outrageous. We had never seen anybody like that because everybody in UFC up to this point is either like, even the heavyweights are primarily either skinny, tall, shredded guys or like really over steroided guys like Alistair Overeem who suck, but they look great, so they keep getting bookings, or big fat punchy guys. We'd never seen anything like this.
No, I mean, that's what it turned out was he was a much better striker than anyone would have anticipated.
And he was just a mountain of muscle just moving towards you at full speed.
Yeah. So he wins his next fight, and then he gets to fight Randy Couture for the UFC Heavyweight Championship, and he knocks him out.
Just stunning.
Yeah, he's had 4 professional fights, and he's the UFC champion.
And even better, it's not just that he's winning. It's that he's winning and talking mad shit.
Yeah, like the greatest heel they've ever seen.
And Paul Heyman is largely who orchestrates that.
Yes.
Because Paul Heyman has become his real-life business manager.
Yes, Heyman is actually managing and booking Brock Lesnar at this point. Like, it's a fascinating, like, crossover between wrestling and MMA. But yeah, Heyman is, like, producing his promos and, like, managing his business as Heyman is, you know, been exiled from WWE at this point. He's persona non grata.
And actually, Heyman's trying to get like his TV show off the ground and do all this other stuff. Brock came to him, and basically he was the only person in the wrestling business that Brock trusted.
Yeah.
Ironically.
Yeah. So check out the buys on some of these UFC fights. Him against Lesnar against Couture does 1 million. Lesnar against Cain Velasquez does 1 million. Lesnar against Carwin does 1.1 million. Lesnar versus Mir, 100. Lesnar versus Mir, 1.6 million. Third biggest UFC show of all time.
And like this was an
only
era
surpassed by Conor McGregor's biggest fights.
Here's the thing. This is an era before Ronda Rousey, before Conor McGregor. Like the biggest stars that they had ever had up to this point were like Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell, not household names, right? Brock Lesnar didn't just put himself on the map. He put UFC in he made UFC a household talking point.
Took it to a totally different level.
And he brought the wrestling fans in. And like UFC fans will act like they don't give a shit about that and like it doesn't matter, but it did. It opened up to an entirely new audience of people. And from like right around that time was really when they started like doing a lot more storylines and concentrating on the narratives of the fight.
Much more wrestling-ish and much more successful, unsurprisingly.
Yeah, focusing on the entrances and like the big spectacle. Like it's what worked.
His UFC run lasts until 2011, but it's spotty. He has lots of problems with his health. Like he has diverticulitis. He nearly dies.
Yeah. They removed like 10 feet of his intestines.
It's disgusting to read about. And like that, he's never the same physically after that. As much as a beast as he still is, like that took a lot out of him. It nearly killed him.
Just the fact that he got back in the octagon to fight again after that is unbelievable. Like, no other human I've ever heard of would do that.
Yeah. The first tease that he was going to come back was in 2000, like towards the end of 2010. Vince really wanted him to wrestle The Undertaker at WrestleMania, and there was at least some discussion of it, and then I think Dana White shut it down. But this is when they did they shot an angle with Lesnar and Undertaker after one of his fights where Taker was at ringside and Taker was being interviewed, and like Lesnar walked past him and they did a little stare down and Taker was just like, "Hey, you want to do it, man?"
If they had done that then, God, because that was literally the peak of Lesnar's popularity.
I think he had just got knocked out in that fight was the thing, but still, like I think you can spin that because he's going to be such a great heel when he comes back to WWE against Taker.
Yeah. Of course, he probably ends the streak then, and like that's not the time, man.
No. They get him back at the beginning of 2012. Like his UFC run has run its course by then. He is not at a point where he can fight at a top level anymore. So goes back to WWE, agrees to a big money deal, rumored to be about $5 million for very limited dates. He works 3 matches between WrestleMania 28 and 29 and does like a couple TV appearances before each match. But, maybe where he work 15, 20 dates this year total.
Yeah. And like, maybe we should hash this out now, because the big thing that everyone talks about with Lesnar is about how he's a part-timer. And I absolutely agree that you should not build your entire promotion around a part-timer like that when there's a lot of other people busting their asses who are also talented. At the same time, there's nobody in this company during this point who deserves the ball at all. There's a reason why they felt the need to bring him in and let him bend them over a barrel like that.
Yeah, I mean, this is when they're having a total change of their business model because they no longer have any stars who can or will work a full-time schedule other than John Cena. Like,
and this is about the time where Cena's putting over every motherfucker.
Just desperately trying to get somebody new the ball. But like, Punk never quite makes it. Daniel Bryan can't stay healthy. Ryback is a flash in the pan. Everybody they try with, they can't get there. And like over the course of these couple of years, like Shawn Michaels retired, Edge hurt his neck and had to retire. Triple H and Undertaker really, winded things down. They're not working full-time schedules anymore, and there's nobody to replace any of them.
And as we've seen during the Lesnar era, nobody ever shows up to replace any of those guys.
No.
It's been 8 years. Nobody ever arrived. They're still milking the Lesnar teeth.
So he returns on the Raw after WrestleMania 28. It's the main event segment of the show. John Cena's in the ring. He calls out The Rock, and instead the opening riff of Lesnar's music hits, and the crowd goes ape shit.
And like, it's such a special moment because we're all pretty sure Lesnar's coming back, but like, I didn't necessarily know it would be here.
Yeah, I didn't think it was going to be this soon.
Yeah, because we had just started hearing the rumors. We thought it would be like, all right, well, they'll do some Cena Rock shit and at
He'll be in for
Rules,
SummerSlam or something. Yeah.
For him, when that music hits too, it's such perfect music.
Yeah.
It's just like, and just the ripple of excitement that runs through the crowd.
It brings them up, and then they come down, and then he comes through the curtain, and they come back up again.
And that's how you know you're over. And lots of people get pops for their music. Only stars get pops when they walk out.
Yeah.
And just that one guy who's just like doing Lesnar's pose and shit, like that's that famous moment.
He walks to the ring, Cena offers him a handshake, Lesnar scoops him up and nails him with the F5.
To an unbelievably explosive pop.
Yeah. Notably, he doesn't have Paul Heyman with him. That doesn't come until later when it, like, just they realize Brock Lesnar is not a good promo and he needs someone to talk for him.
Now, in his defense, the pre-tape stuff they do with Brock here is brilliant.
Yeah.
Where he's just like, I don't give a fuck about John Cena. I don't give a fuck about wrestling. Yeah. Wrestling's dumb.
Yeah. That's what he's always been able to do, is those sit-down pre-taped promos are tremendous. But yeah, like, giving him a mic in the ring in front of a crowd has never worked for him.
Trash disaster.
Yeah.
And like, Heyman's there with him because he's his real life manager. He comes to all the shows with him. Because at this point, Lesnar doesn't trust WWE not to fuck him over. Like, that's a very big part of this.
And yet, we'll see what happens here.
Yes. Yes, we will.
Lesnar said he had returned to bring legitimacy back to WWE. John Laurinaitis, who was the general manager of both Raw and SmackDown at this point, said he had signed Lesnar to be the new face of WWE. Lesnar and Cena had a massive pull-apart brawl that required the entire roster to keep them apart, and Lesnar busted Cena's mouth open in like 10 seconds on that fight.
Yeah, he did.
He's like just lethal.
And that's what really gets across. It's like, when you watch Lesnar now, yes, he's dominant. And like, because he's been pushed to be dominant for a very long time. But there was a different edge to him here because he's coming off of that UFC stuff. So when they say legitimacy, they mean it. Like, he feels way more dangerous than anyone they have.
He's just like out of a totally different world.
Yeah. And like, he was already watching. Yeah, he was already the best at this. And then he went and became the best at that.
Yeah.
He's the Inoki dream.
He just feels like this uncontrollable animal.
This character, this exact character, is what Antonio Inoki was trying to create. A professional wrestler who was credible as a wrestler, then went away and became a dangerous threat in real life fighting. So when you brought him back, fans would be terrified of him. That's what this is. It's just Inoki never got it.
Quote from The Observer. Booking of Lesnar seems almost too easy to screw up, in the sense that there are obvious singles matches that should go on pay-per-view with Cena, Undertaker, Rock, and Steve Austin. Cena should go first and lose. Lesnar should win all of his matches leading to WrestleMania, where he should lose, unless business is so strong that both decide to extend the program another year.
Like, I'm not a gigantic Dave Meltzer fan. But that's it's so simple.
Seems too easy to screw up, and yet they screw it up.
And the funniest part is all of the booking that takes place with Lesnar from the night after Extreme Rules all the way to WrestleMania is perfect. The only thing they fuck up is the very first thing.
Yeah, having him lose this match is so dumb. I don't want to get like sidetracked with it because we'll talk about it a lot in a minute. But what were you thinking for WrestleMania 29 at this point? The first thing I thought of was Rock versus Brock, because it's it's the biggest movie star in the world against like the baddest man in the world's best fighter against the world's biggest star. And I just don't think you could do it because I think Rock was committed to putting over Cena at WrestleMania. I don't think he was going to work with anybody else.
Yeah, I think that's what we didn't know. I think everybody was penciling in Rock versus Brock. There's a lot of history there. It would have been an easy match to put on. But yeah, at the end of the day, Rock's not working with anybody he doesn't want to work with. And he's only coming back to do one thing. He wants to hold the belt one more time, and he wants to put over Cena. That's it.
Put over Cena, pass the torch to him. The rumor was that they were going to set up Rock versus Brock for WrestleMania 30 on the night after WrestleMania 29. But Rock got hurt in the match against Cena, and that was it for him wrestling, so they couldn't do it.
As a small aside, the rumors are floating around that Rock is willing to do a match with Roman Reigns. Would you be interested in that?
Yeah.
Fuck
Reigns
yeah.
is going to be the heel.
Oh, that's that's not up for debate.
That's the thing. It's not what's going to happen. It's such an obvious story to me. It's been a long time now, but isn't the most obvious story in the world that Reigns got fucked over back at WrestleMania with him? WrestleMania 31. Rock wasn't there because he had left the show to go party with Ronda Rousey and his Hollywood friends, and he wasn't there for his family when Roman needed him.
That moment at the Royal Rumble where all the fans turned on me.
Yeah.
You
just
looked
had
at me
to
like
steal
you
the
didn't know
show.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. Suddenly I'm not your blood anymore.
Just because I'm not popular, that's all you ever cared about.
It's such a great story. If Rock came out to help him and he just beat the shit out of Rock, it would be amazing.
Okay, we got to stop talking about this because this is too cool. This is too cool. I can't do this. Okay,
so the main event of this show is going to be Lesnar versus Cena in an Extreme Rules match, and we've got some other interesting stuff too that we'll get into. So the show is Sunday, April 29th, 2012. We're at the Allstate Arena in Chicago, Illinois. It's not sold out. 14,817 in attendance. The pay-per-view does 263,000 buys, which is up from 209,000 the previous year for John Cena versus The Miz versus John Morrison in a steel cage match. Hard to believe that didn't draw big.
Hey, man, it drew pretty big. Honestly, I don't know. Is like 200,000 buys good at this point, or is it bad? Like, where's the pay-per-view business aside from WrestleMania?
It's not. I mean, look at the increase there. Like 54,000 buys is a lot. That's, they made over $1 million just from this one night. Just that boost in pay-per-view buys is over $1 million for the company. So like, he's already paid for a good chunk of his salary just with what he drew here.
A fifth of it. 1/5.
On commentary, we've got the team of Michael Cole, Jerry the King Lawler, and Booker T. What did you think of that trio?
I love Booker T on commentary. I know that so many people don't, and I know that most of what he says is deeply stupid. And like, Cole will constantly tee him up for stuff, and Booker T will just say something completely opposite of what Cole's going for, and Cole will just pause like, well, I guess that's what I'm getting. All right, on to the next.
Yeah.
But I love that. It's so different. He has this Dusty Rhodes energy that I love so much.
Yeah, I feel like what people are looking, like what Vince is clearly looking for in wrestling announcing is like polish, and like Booker T has zero polish, which is why he's never lasted very long in the position.
But they always bring him back to do like the pre-shows and stuff. Like, they love it. I just don't think Vince gets it, which is understandable because there's not that much to get.
The thing that bugged me on this show was Michael Cole was still doing his heel routine.
God, that was so...
It's so weird because you forget about it because he doesn't do it for like 2 matches, and then suddenly he's a total heel for some match, and you can never really figure out why.
That's the thing, too, is that like in the moment as you were watching it, like it was an interesting character and kind of a breath of fresh air, but when you go back and you watch it now, it does not age well.
It just, and it never really led, I mean, God, it led to that horrible match with Lawler at WrestleMania. This is a year after that, and he's still doing it.
They just kind of stopped one day.
Well, they stopped when Lawler had his heart attack.
That's right, because
That
everyone
was
online like saw how like sincere Michael Cole
yeah,
was, and it turned him babyface.
yeah. Like that was finally the end of that, thankfully. But yeah, I mean, it's just I think he was. I thought he would have been a great heel manager. I just thought he should have transitioned or a color commentator, but I just don't. It's hard to have a heel as your play-by-play guy. Like,
Yes, that's the thing. Is it's so distracting because he's just
yeah,
constantly doing the color and the play-by-play.
yeah. Like I think he should have either transitioned away from being play-by-play and been color instead, or he should have left commentary and been a manager. Because I mean, he was a heat machine. He was a great heel promo.
Oh God, yeah. Like he was like going out of his mind on some of this stuff. I don't even know. Like at first it was hard to tell like where he ended and like Vince in his ear began. But like a lot of this clearly came from him.
The stuff with him and Bryan on NXT, like, got me back. I swear, like, got me back into wrestling. It was so good.
Just like the idea that this corporate motherfucker
Yeah.
would finally reveal his true feelings and just shit on the guy who represents all of you watching at home.
Yeah. It was great, and it was liquid hot. And, like, the match with him and Lawler turned out to be terrible, but, like, the build to that was incredibly hot.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. On the pre-show, Santino Marella defeated The Miz to retain the United States Championship in 5 minutes.
Yep. Poor Miz. That's where he is here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'll be, yeah, God, this guy main evented WrestleMania the year before this.
Yep. He sure did, buddy. 1 year.
Ooh, a lot can happen in a year.
And he loses in 5 minutes to the fucking Cobra.
The opening package is all about Cena and Lesnar. I thought this was like a UFC style, both guys sitting down explaining what this match means to them, and it was absolutely tremendous.
One of the best things about this match, and one of the reasons why Cena should have lost, is that everything about this touches on the idea that losing to The Rock took something out of Cena.
Yeah.
That he's just not himself.
Who the hell is he?
He's not ready to stand up to this challenge right now. This is way too much for him. He's trying to approach it with his normal, like, yeah, I'll get through it. I'm John Cena. I don't quit. But
he's overcome every obstacle in his career until now. The Rock beat him, and he can't get a rematch. The Rock's gone.
And it shook him. And that was supposed to be the plot of John Cena this year.
Yeah.
Is he gets annihilated by The Rock and Brock Lesnar back to back, and suddenly there's two bigger stars than him, not just one. So who the fuck is he? And then eventually he comes back around, gets the match with The Rock, beats him, and then all is well again.
Yeah, it's just the frustrating thing with the way the John Cena character is portrayed is every time you think he's actually hit an obstacle that's going to force him to like a critical moment of character development, it never actually happens. Like the status quo was always reset.
John Cena has never attained character development. John Cena, the man, has been yearning, stretching, desperately grasping for character development for 10 years.
Yeah, but he's a cartoon character and he's an action figure.
Yeah. It's like he has an inner Zack Ryder that's just constantly trying to get over, and he does for like a minute and then snaps right back to normal.
Yeah.
Except in his case, that's still making millions of dollars, and in Zack Ryder's case, it's you're not even on TV anymore.
I loved Lesnar's stuff where he's like, if I had stuck around, nobody would know who John Cena was. He'd be carrying my bags.
Here's the thing about that, too.
It's true.
It's true. They wouldn't have needed him.
Not to that extent, but like John Cena's not the guy in this company if Lesnar sticks around. This was going to be Lesnar's world.
Yeah, they weren't building him up as the mega baby face. Like maybe they would have. Moreover, Batista probably doesn't happen because they probably once Cena starts getting over, they shift him to Raw.
Cena's the young stud, but yeah, like Batista, just there's no need for Batista.
If Lesnar stays, they probably don't rush Orton. They probably don't do Batista. They move Cena to Raw.
Different.
The whole world is different. Like there's no question about that.
Opening match is a Falls Count Anywhere match as Kane takes on Randy Orton. Who baby, get excited.
Everybody at home right now, if you're in your car or holding your child or whatever you're doing, raise your hand if you really, really wanted to hear about a Falls Count Anywhere match between Randy Orton and Kane. Put those hands all the way up. Let's see. We have no hands.
All the way back in July 2011, Kane lost a street fight to Orton on SmackDown, and after the match, Kane shook Orton's hand out of respect. When Kane returned in early 2012, he had put the mask back on for the first time since 2003, and he reverted to being a monster. He then started a horrible feud with John Cena, which included such gems as Kane crippling Zack Ryder and John Cena making out with Zack Ryder's girlfriend, and John Cena making an angry face to the camera.
Guys, do you remember when John Cena stole Zack Ryder's girl while he was in a wheelchair? Do you guys remember when John Cena did the most heelish thing it's possible for a person to do, and they just still treated him like a babyface for it? Do you guys remember that? Do you remember how they turned his girlfriend heel and not John Cena?
Yeah. You got the broski and the hoski.
And what is it with cuckolding angles?
After he lost an ambulance match to Cena, he set his sights on Orton, swearing he would get revenge for his humiliating loss back in 2011. They faced off at WrestleMania, and Kane won the match with a choke slam off the top rope. During the build to this match, both men attacked the other man's father as Kane would lay out Bob Orton, and Orton would kidnap Paul Bearer and tie him up in a chair. And then Kane came to rescue him, but instead of saving Paul Bearer, he locked him in a meat locker and abandoned him.
Paul Bearer is not looking good here.
No, he dies a year after this.
Yes, he's looking very rough and in bad shape. And the way that this is this his last appearance on WWE TV?
I believe so.
Yes. He's already been murdered on WWE TV once, which is something we'll cover later this year.
Twice.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Twice.
Edge killed it. Well, Kane really killed him that time, but it was really Edge's fault.
Yeah. And, of course, The Undertaker buried him in a concrete crypt, which, again, we will cover later on this summer.
They killed him for the third time, and he actually stayed dead this time.
Only because he died for real.
Or he would have they definitely would have brought him back for that WrestleMania match because Punk had Paul Heyman in his corner. Undertaker would have had Paul Bearer to counteract Heyman.
That had to have been the plan because they basically make the whole feud about that. Oh my God. And this is so stupid. They go through all the effort with that, and then Kane's just monsters don't care about their dads. And then he kills his own dad. Okay.
On the one hand, who cares about this feud? But on the other hand, great reactions for both guys here.
That is true, yes, absolutely.
I mean, some of it is just hot Chicago crowd, and it's the first match on the pay-per-view. I think the first guy through the curtain is always going to get a big reaction on a pay-per-view. It's just the way it is.
But also, these are cases 1A and 1B, and the guys who will remain over no matter how shittily they're booked or how little they have going on or how little you actually want to see them wrestle. People love these two men and hate their matches.
Kane immediately knocks Orton over the top to the floor. He brings a lead pipe into the ring. Orton gets the pipe and hits some shots with it. They fight out of the ring, into the crowd, on the stage, and then backstage. Backstage, Zack Ryder attacks Kane, and Kane immediately beats him up.
He gets 10 seconds of screen time. This feud is functionally still about Zack Ryder.
Yeah, I just want to point out, it was only in December Zack Ryder won the U.S. title and got one of the biggest pops of the year doing it.
Yes, that was the culmination of all of his Internet World Champion, of him just grabbing the WWE by the scruff of the neck and dragging it into the digital era finally. And the thanks he got was one U.S. title run that ended immediately and now a definitive burial.
Yeah, for all the bullshit about oh, guys need to grab the brass ring, when somebody actually does it, they don't like it.
No, Vince hates that shit. He considers it going against his opinion. Like, I already decided you suck. How dare you make me have to look at you again?
They fight back into the arena and into the ring. Orton hits Kane with a power slam. They go on the floor. Orton hits the hanging DDT off the announce table onto the floor. Kane blocks an RKO. He slams Orton into the ring post. Kane goes up to the top rope. Orton crotches him and hits a superplex. Kane comes back with a choke slam. He sets up for the tombstone on the chair. Orton slips out and hits an RKO onto the chair. And that's enough for the pin in about 17 minutes. Last 5 minutes were pretty hot, but I did not need to see 17 minutes of these guys wrestling.
There are 4 matches on this show that go over 16 minutes.
Oh.
There are 2 matches on the show that go over like 22 minutes. Like, I don't think I've seen a WWE show with this many long matches on it, maybe ever.
A couple of those matches are really good. This one was not one of them.
This match blew.
Yeah. Backstage, Johnny Ace is with someone I don't recognize. Who is this?
It's Eve Torres.
Eve Torres, yeah. Teddy Long, who's been forced to be his assistant, comes in with champagne. Teddy Long had been the general manager of SmackDown, and then they had a match at WrestleMania where they each had a team of like 6 or 7 guys, and the winner's team got to run both shows, and Johnny Ace's team won. So he's running both Raw and SmackDown now.
Couple of comments about this really quick. One, Eve Torres, wonderful woman. I thought she briefly had a time where she was like the top female star in the company. Thought she was very underrated.
Is she the hostky?
Yes, she was the hostky. She winds up being married to a Gracie now. She's like an MMA fighter herself.
Wow.
John Laurinaitis becoming the general manager of Raw because everyone hates him so much in real life, Vince assumed it would carry over to TV.
People did hate him.
Yeah, they did. But like, it wasn't. Here's the problem. There used to be a gigantic debate, and you kids might not remember this, but your dads might, called about X-Pac heat. Is it possible to be so disliked that the amount of heat you get isn't worth it because people just turn off the TV because they don't want to see you? I guess now we'd call it Baron Corbin heat.
I think so. I question whether X-Pac actually had X-Pac heat, though.
No, he didn't. But the X Factor theme song did. Every time I heard, "Hey, yo, you dealing with the X Factor," I'd change the channel.
I love that, like, our second podcast, part of the reason I wanted to do that Backlash show we did was because X Factor was on it.
That's like, we came out of the first episode and I was like, all right, we did WrestleMania. Awesome. I guess this is a new podcast that we're going to do. Steve, what's the thing that you're most interested in talking about? And he was just like, hey, have you listened to this theme song lately? And he just sent me like a link to the X Factor theme song.
There is nothing more heelish than Uncle Cracker.
I can't disagree with you there. But,
God, imagine if Baron Corbin came out to that song.
I would actually probably come around and start liking him. But like,
in
the
the case that Baron Corbin has such great entrance music.
Yeah, it really is very good.
Like, The Undertaker could come out to that shit.
See, but here with John Laurinaitis, my problem with characters that get this much heat that you can't actually get a real match out of is that
he can't wrestle is the thing.
Okay, sort of.
Not well.
As a Japanese wrestling fan, I also have to point out that, like, the big thing about John Laurinaitis everyone always said was like, well, back in All Japan, he used to have these killer tag matches. No, shut the fuck up. He was not the good part in those matches.
John Laurinaitis had multiple 5-star matches in Japan.
Okay, you're starting something with me, Steve, and you're just doing it to fuck with me.
And then he married the Bella's mom.
Yes. And, like, the thing about John Laurinaitis is the reason that he's a heel GM here is because he spent the last 10 years essentially destroying the very concept of women's credibility by, like, literally just going and finding the hottest women that he wants to fuck and promoting only them. And if they can wrestle, what a lovely coincidence. And he's just a deeply fucking terrible man. So yeah, everyone hated him. So here he is. Along the lines of him being a deeply horrible man. Hey, what is it called when a white guy in a white suit who's a rich landowner has a black guy doing all of his bidding for him?
Why is Teddy Long subjecting himself to this?
I
I don't think that was part of the stipulation.
I don't know the answer to that, Steve, but this is not subtle. This is not okay. This is fucked up.
Next up, we've got Brodus Clay versus Dolph Ziggler.
Oh boy.
They spent weeks building up Brodus as a monster, and then he debuted, or really re-debuted because he had already been Alberto Del Rio's henchman in 2011, but I don't think anyone remembered that.
Nope.
He debuts, and it turns out he's a dancing fool. I actually kind of love this.
See, and they had been like, we had all been wondering like how he was going to be repackaged and stuff, because it's one of those rare times where you knew something was coming with him, but you didn't know what it was. And like there was that big build to like his first reveal. And when the fucking Somebody Call My Mama Ernest the Cat Miller music starts.
Call my mama, baby. Somebody call my mama, baby.
I'm not sure I've ever been more taken aback by a wrestling segment. Just being like, excuse me?
And he's got Cameron and Naomi dancing for him.
And like, I didn't even hate it. Like, I couldn't process it that they had decided to do this.
Yeah.
Like, Vince loves dancing ethnic people so much. There's also a word for that.
Yeah.
But fuck, he loved Brodus Clay. And by the way, let me just say, Brodus Clay does not look like a star here. Fuck Brodus Clay.
You know what he does now?
Yes, I believe he's a Fox News correspondent, isn't he?
Yeah. He's a talking head on Fox Business Network.
Yes, and I believe he just got like sued for sexual harassment from one of his co-hosts or something.
Hard to believe someone on Fox News would do that.
Yeah, what a huge fucking scumbag. The part I want to make is that Cameron has no business being in a ring or around a ring or near any sort of television camera whatsoever.
This was the best match she had seen since Melina versus Alicia Fox.
She will never live that down until the day that she dies. The look on Stone Cold Steve Austin's face when she says that Melina versus Alicia Fox is her favorite match of all time, and it had just aired the night before. Oh, at the show that they took them to.
Yeah. God, that was a great season. Tough Enough.
God, we should cover Tough Enough at some point.
We should.
But okay. I want to say is that Naomi looks like a goddamn star here. Looks like a goddamn star every step of the way to now.
How have they not given her a bigger push? It's insane.
They have taken a big sack of money and just intentionally thrown it off a bridge every year since this.
Yeah. Just picture the Dark Knight where Joker burns the massive pile of money. Like, that's what they've done with her.
Yep.
Hornswoggle plays Mini Brodus here, and Michael Cole hates them both. This is where heel Cole comes out.
Michael Cole was right.
Vicky Guerrero gets a ton of heat introducing Dolph, who has Jack Swagger backing him up in a tag team that I have no memory of.
I'm going to float maybe a controversial opinion. I don't know that it necessarily should be, but is Vicky Guerrero kind of super hot here?
She had lost a lot of weight. She was looking really good.
I mean, like, she's like super in shape and she looks healthy and like she's kind of like beaming. Like she's like clearly in a good place in her life. I'm like, good for her. God damn. She's like finally come all this way. This is her cougar phase where she's just fucking young blonde men.
Apparently, I assume that was what was going on here. She's got these two studs.
Yep.
Ziggler is initially able to outsmart Clay, and Swagger hits him with a pounce out on the floor.
God damn, anyone in wrestling can do the pounce. It can become the new super kick where everyone does it. That's fine.
Clay makes a comeback, and he gets the pin with the splash in about 5 minutes. This is a real low point for Dolph Ziggler.
And like he'll have so many high points after this. Like this isn't the end. Uh,
Yeah,
as you've said,
he wins the world heavyweight title a year after this.
as you've said on podcasts before, it's amazing that a guy like Dolph Ziggler couldn't have just gone away at a point like this and
What
come
he
back
needed.
later.
Yeah, it's what he needed, and he just never left.
He never got the chance. Like it's just constantly in and out of these stupid tag teams and stupid alliances. And at one point it's Big E and AJ, and at one point it's Vicky, and at one point like it's endless.
Next up, we've got a tables match for the Intercontinental Championship. This was it's the Big Show defending against Cody Rhodes. This was determined to be a tables match by spin of a wheel on the pre-show. Cody spent weeks leading up to WrestleMania mocking Big Show's WrestleMania failures, and then Big Show knocked him out and won the IC title from him in a very satisfying match.
I do love that the Big Show, after all his years in the business, his one WrestleMania moment is winning the IC title from Cody Rhodes.
Yeah.
But even so, the build to this match, which was so simple, it was literally just a spin of the wheel, and then it lands on a tables match, and Big Show says, good luck.
Yeah.
That's all you need. Cody Rhodes can't win this fucking match. It's impossible.
No. Big Show sends Cody about 10 feet in the air with a backdrop. Cody gets in a little bit of offense, but Show just sort of shrugs it off. Big Show beats up Cody like all around ringside, is just kind of toying with him. As Cody like runs back into the ring, Big Show gets up on the apron and goes to climb into the ring. Cody hits him with a drop kick. Big Show, slips off the apron and his leg goes through the table.
And just the look, the magical, amazing camera shot of the look on his face as he realized he stepped through a table.
Yeah.
It's just this whole moment where like the whole crowd just like holds their breath like, did that really just happen? Did that really just happen?
Yeah. Cody wins. Cody's the Intercontinental Champion once again.
Gets
Loved it.
Mega pop for that too. Like this was just great. Like if you want to get the belt off of Big Show, at the time people tore this to shreds. They hated
How? Why are people so joyless?
This is fucking funny.
Does everything
and
have to be so fucking serious and, I don't know, melodramatic? Like, this was fun. It was fun. It was funny. It was entertaining.
People genuinely liked it. The person they wanted to win won. It didn't hurt the Big Show, certainly.
Now, Big Show turns heel right after this this is when it turns out he's broke, right?
Yes.
Why didn't Big Show ever save his money?
I mean, what money? He never made it to the main event at any point.
Yeah. So he ends up becoming John Laurinaitis' stooge right after this.
That's actually a pretty good heel turn. I like that one.
It is kind of a running theme of his career that like he's a selfish prick who will always like turn on people for himself.
Yeah, don't put him on your Survivor Series team.
No. He will fuck you over.
Immediately.
Big Show attacks Cody after the match. He chokeslams him through a table, and then he throws him over the top rope through a table on the floor. That was a pretty sick bump.
Yeah, it was. Cody has become such a good performer here, but physically he's just not ready yet. And it seemed like WWE wanted to push him. It seemed like
he's just not enough.
I think they just liked the idea of pushing Cody Rhodes, but they didn't like who Cody Rhodes actually was as a performer at this point. If he had found white-haired, muscly build Cody Rhodes here, do you think it would have worked?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it does. There was an interest. Like they clearly. What I always said about Cody was like he was cursed by how good he was. Because he was so good, they would give him the worst gimmicks, and he could make them work. Like, his gimmicks were, he had a mustache, he was handsome, he had a broken face, and, like, was hideous and didn't want anyone to see him. Stardust. And he managed to make all of these things work because he was so talented.
he managed to make one of the weirdest character transitions of all time, where he was beautiful and dashing, and then he had a broken, scarred face, and then he came out of that and somehow merged those two characters together, and it worked.
What is this? Yeah, what is this? Is post like face break? Like, what is his character at this point?
At this point, he is a dashing person with a maniacal side, I guess.
So it's like a Jekyll Hyde thing.
Yeah. So that's why he always does this thing where he like runs up the steps and he like laughs, but then he gets real serious.
I guess
he's trying to do like a Joker thing.
I think that's more thought than the writers put into it.
It's an impossible character to portray. Like, you're playing three characters at the same time. He's trying to be like his own continuity, but it's impossible.
We go backstage where Matt Stryker interviews Daniel Bryan. Daniel asks a series of rhetorical questions about whether he's going to beat Sheamus. The crowd is supposed to say no, but they all say yes instead. And then we see that AJ is watching him in the background. We'll get into the backstory here.
Daniel Bryan was always an underrated heel promo, despite the fact that no one ever at any point wanted him to cut a heel promo. But he's doing a good job here.
So next we've got the 2 out of 3 falls match for the World Heavyweight Championship as Sheamus defends against Daniel Bryan. Sheamus won the Royal Rumble back in January and chose to face Bryan at WrestleMania for the World Heavyweight title. Sheamus, of course, won that match in just 18 seconds as Bryan let himself get distracted kissing AJ and then got caught with a brogue kick and pinned immediately in the second shortest match in WrestleMania history, I believe.
I believe it was at the time the fastest, and it was beaten by Rock versus Rowan.
Oh, right. Now I'm thinking of King Kong Bundy at the first WrestleMania, brother.
Yeah. So I believe it was the second then, and now it's third because
Rock and Rowan. Look, what was at the time, what were your feelings on this, and have they changed at all over the years?
Fucking stupid. Did nothing for Sheamus, did nothing for Bryan, did nothing.
I think it killed Sheamus.
Yeah. Because here's the thing about Sheamus is that like nobody really loved Sheamus, but he had momentum. He was
hate him.
He was getting really good in the ring is the thing.
Yeah.
And like he was putting on these like awesome like 20-minute matches at every pay-per-view. So like around the time of like the fall of the year before, he started to get like some real momentum with people. And they just decided to take that momentum and put it in such a weird place. And like to do this and they just made him a bully, basically. Yeah. They just came obsessed with the idea that Sheamus as a bully would get over and be cool. And this was part of that. It's just, and people were genuinely excited about this match. It was supposed to be the match that was going to carry the show. The rest of the show was supposed to suck ass. This was supposed to be the like 20-minute awesome match. We got 18 seconds.
Yeah. So it's supposed to get Sheamus over, bury Bryan. It ends up, I think, being like an anchor around Sheamus's neck, and it ends up being the best thing that ever happened to Bryan because the fans who loved him just love him even more afterward.
And that's what WWE finds out, much to their chagrin, is that the more they de-push him, the more he gets over.
So Bryan blamed AJ for the loss, and he broke up with her. That's the beginning of her actually developing a personality and becoming a crazy person.
What did you think about AJ? Because the show basically very much becomes about AJ for a long period of time.
That was a little too much. I would not have made her the general manager of Raw. I thought the whole thing with Punk had some potential, but like there was no reason why Punk could not portray himself as being into AJ. It just didn't work.
Which is deeply ironic.
Because
he was.
Yeah, he married her.
That's the funniest thing. It's just
was that storyline supposed to be like she liked him, he wasn't into her, and Daniel was jealous?
What it's really supposed to be is that right around this time she discovers that what she is someone who worships chaos. So she seduces men, and when they don't give her the attention she wants, she destroys them.
Yeah.
So she's just constantly moving on to the next person. She does the same thing later in the year with Cena, where she like joins with Dolph instead and like helps Dolph actually beat Cena in like the biggest moment of Dolph's career until he wins the title.
I thought the street fight between Punk and Bryan at I think it was Money in the Bank this year was an excellent match.
Yes, an absolutely excellent match.
Yeah. Um, so they announced that the first superstar to get either 2 pinfalls or 2 submissions will be the winner. That is not what happens in this match.
Yeah, they specifically said that, and I thought it was so odd.
Why didn't they just say 2 falls?
Because that's what every 2 out of 3 falls match is any kind of fall, obviously.
The old school way is that you could only win, you couldn't win the title if there was a DQ on one of your wins. The WWF did that a few times back in the 80s, where the baby faces would win the 2 out of 3 falls match, but one of the falls would be by DQ, so they wouldn't win the titles.
Well, shit, the real old school way back in the 50s is all 3 had to be by submission. There was no other kind of fall that counted.
Yeah, that's real wrestling.
Yeah. They could have done that here and I would have watched it. Fuck yeah.
Bryan is out first. He gets a mixed reaction. There's a lot of yes, but also some boos. And then Sheamus comes out and he gets booed out of the building.
It's not quite like John Cena the year before level, but like, boy, they don't like Sheamus. And it's one of those things where like a wrestler is made to represent the booking decision around him. It's not Sheamus's fault, but he just has to carry that albatross with him.
How crazy is it that an Irish guy isn't over in Chicago?
I mean,
this is how wrong they've gone that an Irish babyface is getting booed in Chicago.
An Irish ass-kicking babyface who's about to tear the house down for 22 minutes.
Yeah. And that's not a typical, like, Sheamus was not a mega babyface or anything, but like he was a pretty solid like face champion on SmackDown this year.
They thought that he could be the guy to genuinely carry the ball. It turned out that that wasn't really the role that suited him the most. Honestly, the best work of his career came in the bar with Cesaro, where he was just like, you could slot him into a main event anytime and he would be credible, but he's not an A player, right?
No. I think he was probably miscast as a face overall too, although he does have a lot of fire. I just think his like size and personality scream heel to me.
His fire in the ring is exceptional, and it's something that people didn't really talk about enough at the time. And it led me to, embarrassingly, like if we were pulling out like freezing cold takes, I compared him to Kenta Kobashi at the time.
Oh, shit. Wow.
That was dumb. But what I meant is that the entire match would just be built around the villain beats the shit out of dumb Sheamus, who's too stupid to realize how to actually win a match except to keep coming ahead. And then eventually he's just got so much fucking fire, he just busts through and wins the match anyway.
He feels like another guy who could have been a great opponent for Lesnar. Because physically, he's a match for him.
Yeah.
One of the only guys who you look at and you're like, okay, that guy can go toe-to-toe with Brock. I buy that.
And I don't feel like they ever really made enough about the parts of Sheamus that, like, really matter. Like, he's massive. He's
so big.
Like, there's very few people on the roster these days as tall as he is, for one thing.
Oh,
he's ripped to fucking shreds.
Yeah, incredible physique. Like, yeah, top 5 physique in the world at this point, I'd say.
Yeah. And
like, this is an era where it's a pretty natural looking roster. Like, there's only he's got a better body than Lesnar does.
Yeah.
Like, it's him and Cena. I'm trying to think of anybody. I mean, Ryback, but Ryback's all. We'll get to Ryback. He's all covered up.
We got so much to talk about with Ryback. We're not there yet.
So anyway, the match starts. Sheamus goes for the brogue kick in the first 30 seconds, but Bryan ducks it. Bryan goes for a drop kick off the apron. Sheamus catches him out of the air and runs him into the barricade. They're dueling 18 seconds. Daniel Bryan chants. I guess we should note Sheamus came out for the match in an 18 seconds shirt to mock how short the match at WrestleMania was.
Yep.
Bryan stretches Sheamus, including manipulating his fingers. He just like twists him up into a pretzel.
That is, for some reason, I've seen it a million times, but anytime anybody works the hand or the fingers,
Oh,
it's the most brutal thing in the world.
I'm so squeamish about my fingers. I'm terrified of getting them like caught in a door, like anything. I'm so scared of it.
Marty Scurll has built his entire career out of this.
Bryan just destroys Sheamus's shoulder. Sheamus makes a comeback. He hits 10 beats of the Bowery and a fallaway slam. He comes back with a drop kick and retakes the advantage. Sheamus blocks a super Frankensteiner, then hits a diving shoulder block from the top rope. Bryan ties Sheamus up in the ropes and proceeds to hit him with kicks to the shoulder until the referee disqualifies him, and Sheamus goes up 1-0 after winning the first fall.
Yep.
But he's so messed up he can't even stand. Bryan gets him in the yes lock and like covers his mouth with his hands, and Sheamus passes out.
This is really cool. I love it when heels do this, where it's just like, yeah, you get your Paul, but I fucked you up so bad you're toast.
Yeah. The referees manage to revive Sheamus for the third fall. Sheamus pops up and hits the brogue kick, but he's slow to cover and he doesn't get a strong cover. Bryan kicks out at 2. Bryan hits a brutal kick, but he misses the diving headbutt. Sheamus then hits the brogue kick to get the pin in 22 minutes. I thought this was like a forgotten gem.
I feel like all of these, like Bryan and Sheamus, like they had more matches, I think, and then like Sheamus goes on to have like a bunch of like 20-minute classics that nobody remembers against like Del Rio, yeah.
Ziggler, yeah.
It's just like and every single month you'd be like, man, I don't want to watch this fucking match. And at the end of the 20 minutes, you'd be like, that match was fucking amazing. And you'd immediately forget about it.
Next up, we've got Ryback against Aaron Relic and Jay Hatton.
Okay, here we go.
Ryback has been on a path of destruction where he's been squashing jobbers. So here they've upgraded him to fighting 2 guys at once. The jabronis actually get to do a promo about how they'll beat Ryback because 2 is better than 1.
It's a brutally terrible promo.
I think it's intentional. I think it's meant to be bad. Like, it goes on so long.
And it's meant to give you like a cheer for when Ryback comes out. Ryback does not get a cheer when he comes out.
No, he gets Goldberg chants.
Guys, let me paint you a word picture about Ryback, because it has bothered me for so long that we've never gotten a chance to talk about what a disaster he is. Everything about the Ryback character is fucking stupid. Okay? From the singlet, which is just a ripoff of Rob Van Dam.
Why did they let him wear a Rob Van Dam singlet? Why was that a good idea?
From the name Ryback, which, as a Ryan myself, is just a stupid-ass name.
Wake up, it's feeding time!
All of his catchphrases are the worst. His, like, super, like, intense stare that just made him look creepy and weird.
Me more.
From
the meat hook.
The meat hook was the one cool thing that he did, because he just lay into jobbers with these clotheslines. Like,
the shell shock was a horrible finisher.
The shell shock is a disastrous finish. Why don't you just have him do the meat hook? I don't understand. Yeah, it was cool when he'd get 2 people up for the shell shock. That was fine. But, like, the little marching that he would do. And when he would do, like, this thing where he would, like, pound his fist down and the sound of pyro would happen, but there'd be no pyro. Everything about this, the music, which was terrible and plotting, everything about this presentation is designed to make you hate Ryback. And it is a testament to the magic and splendor of the squash match that Ryback becomes a big star.
All he does is beat jabronis' asses for 6 months, and then he's in the main event.
And here's the thing. is it got to the point where like my favorite part of any pay-per-view during this era is the Ryback squash. Like I'll turn it on and be like, I don't like Ryback. Everything about his presentation bothers me on like an aesthetic level. But fuck, I just like seeing jobbers get beat up.
How many guys have they done this push with in like the last 10 years? And how many guys has it worked for?
All of them.
Braun Strowman, Rusev. I'm forgetting a couple people, but like whenever they just have somebody squash jobbers for months on end, they get over.
I call this the murder machine push.
Yeah.
You just feed people into the murder machine, and it works every time. Because what happens is, it doesn't matter if Ryback, like wrestler or what threat or whatever, after you've seen him murdering people for 6 months, it just clicks in your brain that he's a credible threat. So then you just skip the process of him going for like the IC title. You put him right in there with the main eventers, and you believe it because all you've done is see him kill people. That's the point of the push. You get to skip all of the stupid steps in between.
Ryback hits the meat hook clothesline, the backpack stunner, which is another stupid move.
He called that the over-the-shoulder boulder holder.
God, I hate him. I hate him. I hated him on NXT.
Yep.
What was the worst? His heel turn was probably the worst thing they ever did with him.
Oh my God, when he was wrestling like 20-minute matches as the heel. The best moment, okay, as we're burying Ryback in a
Paul
ditch.
Heyman proposed to him.
As we're burying Ryback, let's acknowledge, Ryback had like a 3-month span where he was the best thing on WWE television.
Yeah.
Like it was like from the moment that they brought, because he was like feuding with CM Punk, like CM Punk was burying somebody, I don't even remember who it was, and like Ryback just walks in.
Yeah.
And just that moment where you're like, oh fuck, CM Punk's about to get his brains beat in.
Yeah.
That was a beautiful moment. The Shield match, where it was Kane, Daniel Bryan, and Ryback.
Him and Hell No. Yeah.
Yeah, Ryback was the
awesome.
star of that match. So, like, he had potential. He probably should have won the belt, if we're being totally honest.
Yeah, as much as we just buried him, they also probably should have put the world title on him. Again, wrestling can be weird sometimes.
This is a testament to the magic of the squash match, is that everything about him was wrong, but you didn't notice that because the squash matches were so goddamn entertaining to watch. So, like, he got super over. All right, well, you got him over, despite the fact that everything you chose to do with him was stupid. Use it.
Matt Stryker interviews CM Punk backstage. Punk will defend the WWE Championship against Chris Jericho tonight in a Chicago street fight. He will fight not only for his title, but also for his family's honor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this the CM Punk you want to see?
No. Why is he dad jeans Punk?
The look he sports here is trash. Just like some old dad jeans, and like it looks like he's like wearing like fishing waiter boots.
Yeah, an oversized t-shirt and knee pads over the jeans.
It's
fucking nerd.
It's rough.
All right, Chicago street fight for the WWE Championship. CM Punk defends against Chris Jericho. The backstory here is a little convoluted. Jericho made a surprise return to WWE after weeks of cryptic video packages. These were the ones with like the creepy kids in the classroom.
Yeah, it was.
It felt like it was mysterious just for the sake of it.
Well, yeah, they were obviously trying. Jericho had come back with all of these like packages and stuff before, so they were just trying to like do something like that again. But by this point, like it had been done so much, and this one just
it made you think it was like Undertaker, like maybe Brock, but yeah, you didn't really associate it with Jericho.
And it just wasn't all that exciting. Like the people that they made you think that it was. When Save Us Y2J happened, people genuinely had like a million theories as to who it was, and they like lit up the forums. At this point, people just didn't care that much.
Yeah. He came back, and for the first couple weeks, he didn't say a single word. Like, he would come out and he would like trollishly rev up the crowd, and then he would just leave.
I remember thinking that was like a master class in
It
heeldom.
was, yeah.
Like, it didn't go anywhere, but
It
like,
was the only way to make him a heel when he was coming back.
because they'd cheer and cheer and cheer and cheer, and then they'd eventually turn sour. Like, all right, we'll fucking do something.
Yeah. He came up short at the Royal Rumble. He was the runner-up against Sheamus, and then he revealed he had come back to beat CM Punk for the WWE title to prove that him, not Punk, was the best in the world. Yeah,
Now,
sure, I guess.
This is 2012. Hiroshi Tanahashi is in the middle of the greatest run of professional wrestling in the history of the concept.
Hiroshi Tanahashi doesn't exist in the WWE.
Fuck WWE. There's one best in the world.
Yeah, CM Punk. Jericho's not the best in the world. He's the best in the world at what he does.
Yeah, that was the thing too. It's like the feud didn't even make sense. It's like that was really it. That he used a part of your catchphrase, like for the catchphrase that you ripped off of Wolverine.
He spent the weeks leading up to WrestleMania revealing personal secrets about Punk, that his father was an alcoholic, his sister was a drug addict, and he was born before his parents were married, making him the legal definition of a bastard.
Of a bastard.
I just love, you can see Vince coach. It's like, I want you to call him a bastard.
But Vince, that's not, nobody really cares about that. It's the worst insult anyone can be. And then he just cries in the closet about his dad for a while.
It's pure Freudian because Vince is a bastard.
Brothers can't fight.
Families are happy. Except when they fuck.
Oh my God. Poor little Vince.
The deeply depraved mind of Vince McMahon.
So, yeah, this
is trying too hard.
And if you followed CM Punk for any part of his career, you've already seen this stupid, well, straight edge is dumb thing done so many times. It doesn't mean anything. They do this segment where he pours liquor on CM Punk after he knocks him down, and then he slips and falls in the puddle of liquor. It's a disaster.
They play the video where, Punk was at a bar, he was drinking. Let's make him take a sobriety test in the ring.
And they like play that straight. That's like a 20-minute segment.
Goes on and on and on. Yeah. Better version of this, when JBL poured Punk a shot of Jack Daniels and told him if he drank it, that he'd forfeit their match.
That was pretty good.
Yeah. JBL could pull this kind of thing off. Like, I don't know. For evil Jericho, he did pull it off against Shawn Michaels. He made it work that time. Here, just, it didn't click.
No, not at all.
Their match at WrestleMania was not terribly good.
This is not a good time for Jericho. Obviously, every time Jericho comes back from being away for a while, he just blows it for like 6 months until he figures out what the fuck he's supposed to be doing.
This is the time he gets suspended because he like desecrates the Brazilian flag, if I'm remembering right.
Gosh. Where in the timeline is the time that he punches that woman in the face in the parking lot when she's trying to get into his car? Is that this?
It may be. I think so.
Yeah. And the time where he and Shane Helms like assault a woman at a gas station.
I don't remember that.
There's a lot of weird. It's never completely. Chris Jericho's just assaulting women for no reason. But it's always just kind of like
enough of a pattern there that you really start to ask some questions about him.
Why is his fist so often connecting with female faces?
Punk gets a huge pop in his hometown, as you would expect. Conquering hero returning as champion.
But noteworthy, Not quite the pop he got the year before.
He's been champion for a solid 6 months now, and he's going to be champion for another 8 here. It's a long ass title reign.
What do you think of the decision to make him the longest like modern day title reign ever? Or like since what is it? What are they going up against? Like Backlund's is specifically what they're trying to beat.
Oh God, no! Backlund was champion for 6 years. It's Diesel he had to beat.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right.
Now somebody being champion for a year is kind of no sweat because a bunch of people have done it. But yeah, at this point, this was Cena had been champion for almost a year at one point. But yeah, the belt Cena needed a break from the belt. Cena had been champion for like most of the previous 5 years. I don't know who else. Who else would you have put the belt on in this time period is the thing. Who else can carry the title? It's thin when you really look at it.
I mean, Ryback could have taken it around October, but by then you already know you're going to The Rock at Royal Rumble, so that's a no.
Yeah.
I guess Sheamus could have taken it from him, but nobody wants that. Yeah, there's really nobody. And like I don't
think it's the right time for Daniel Bryan.
I don't hate the idea of it. It was just so clearly a predetermined, well, he's going to hold the belt for a year. Let's just find some filler bullshit for him to do until it's time.
No, and the babyface part of it was not very good. The heel part of it was good. I thought he was a very good heel
returned
champion.
heel and like called John Cena the New York Yankees and all of that shit. That's good.
Yeah, that because it's just Punk's a heel. It's his character, it's his personality. He's not meant to be a babyface.
He's reverse Ricky Steamboat. He's as unlikable a person as you can imagine.
Not even his own family likes him.
Yeah, funny thing about that, during the course of this match, they keep panning over to his family, and they don't give a fuck.
I mean, I feel like I don't know his backstory as much as other folks do. He's had issues with his family, right? Haven't they been estranged?
That's correct. I mean, he and his sister have always been close. He and his parents have always had many issues, yes.
Yeah, okay. Punk jumps Jericho right off the bell, but Jericho takes advantage of his aggressiveness to turn the tide. Jericho beats up Punk right in front of his family, and they say, "Come on, Punk."
Come on, Punk. That's definitely the name that we call you.
Of course it is. Punk's sister slaps Jericho. Jericho goes after her, and Punk cuts him off and hammers him. Punk clears off the announce table, slams Jericho through the table covering. Then he sets up for a pile driver, but Jericho backdrops out of it. They go back in the ring. Punk hits Jericho with a back suplex and a hangman. Punk goes for the springboard clothesline, but he slips and Jericho catches him with a kendo stick shot. Jericho knocks Punk out and then pours a beer on him.
They redo that spot in this match as if it was a good spot to begin with.
It's going to poison him, the alcohol.
Oh, yeah. Like,
that's how being straight edge works.
A lethal dose of poison.
Punk fires up. He hits some kendo stick shots and a swinging neck breaker. The corner knee, the bulldog. Jericho slips out of the GTS. He goes for the walls of Jericho, but Punk blocks it. Punk hits a diving elbow for 2. Jericho goes for the lion salt. Punk catches him off his shoulders and sets up for the GTS. But Jericho slips out. Kind of wish that had just been the finish right there.
I completely agree. This match
goes for another 10 minutes.
This match is endless, guys. It's not good. From the first moment, they have no chemistry. Everything's sloppy. They're both all over the place. Like, CM Punk always had a tendency for his matches to be a little loose, let's say.
They're very similar wrestlers.
Yes. And like,
a lot of the same weaknesses.
It just compounds so much. And they just get so much time. Because it's clear that everyone thinks this is going to be like the best fucking match of all time. Oh my God, they'll go everywhere and do everything. And it's not. It's just not.
I mean, neither guy has ever struck me as much of a brawler. Like, neither guy has ever been the guy who's going to show a ton of intensity and kick the shit out of somebody.
No, not really. Neither one of these guys has babyface fire at all. at all.
Yeah, they're both kind of smirky dickhead heels.
Yeah, you have to do that in order to like have a brawl that works. Somebody's got to be the guy who gets abused and then fires up. Who's that guy here? It's supposed to be Punk, but Punk has negative fire.
Jericho gets him in the walls of Jericho. Punk crawls to the corner, gets a fire extinguisher, and sprays Jericho with it. Punk lays Jericho out on the announce table, and he hits the flying elbow all the way from the top rope down to the table. That is an impressive spot.
Yes, it was. And like he hits it so clean. Like that was beautiful.
Jericho kicks out of a pin, but Punk locks him in the Anaconda Vice. Jericho gets a kendo stick and beats Punk off. Jericho hits the code breaker. Punk kicks out at 2. Jericho tries for the GTS. Punk slips out. He catapults Jericho into the exposed turnbuckle and then hits the GTS for the pin after 25 minutes. Too long.
Way too long.
15, I think, would have been really good. I think they could have handled 20. 25 was really pushing it.
They had 10 minutes of ideas and stretched it for 25. There's no worse match than one that just wildly overstays its welcome.
Punk jumps into the crowd to celebrate with his family, and they pretend like they like him.
That's so brutal, but true.
Nikki and Brie Bella backstage mock Beth Phoenix for being injured. She's not medically cleared to compete tonight, so Nikki is going to have to defend the title against a mystery opponent, and she's assured that it's not Karma, and it actually isn't.
Man, remember Karma?
Man, I was so excited for her. They did such an amazing job of building her up, and then she, unfortunately got pregnant at the wrong time, and the pregnancy ended really tragically.
Yes. Hopefully there will at some point be an opportunity for us to cover a show that's like tangentially related to those early like debuting vignettes that she had, because they were some of the best WWE ever did.
They were haunting.
Like WWE's tried to be scary and creepy so many times to very little effect. These things were nuts.
Just her laugh and then tearing apart the Barbie dolls. And then when
she did come out and she would just tear to shreds everyone. Yeah. Because she was the cure. Our women's division was all like stick thin Johnny Ace girls. Yeah. Karma was going to kill him.
Yeah, it's amazing. Triple H's first 2 signings when he started running talent were Sin Cara and Karma, and they both seemed like home run hires, and both of them totally end up striking out.
Yeah.
But for Karma, due to circumstances totally beyond her control, like Sin Cara, that's a harder one.
I mean, here's the problem with Sin Cara, and this is something that people don't really know. Mystico was not just a big draw. He was arguably the biggest draw in all of professional wrestling for a solid 5 years in the thousands. Like, he put Lucha Libre back on the map. He, like, dragged it out of the garbage, brushed it off, and made it a thing again. Like, at the end, in the Observer Awards every year, the top draws would be like Lesnar, Mystico, Tanahashi, Cena, nobody else. There were no other people. So it's such a slam dunk to get him. He was like new Rey Mysterio. I don't think anybody knew that he was a huge asshole who was going to refuse to adapt to the American style. How could you have known?
And to some extent, he was like, they didn't have anybody who could work the lucha style with him.
Yeah, I think that's when Triple H decided to create NXT, is because there had to be something for a Sin Cara to do to get ready, and there wasn't then. Like, going to FCW wasn't going to help him. He needed like an actual performance center where he could learn the American style.
So the match, Nikki Bella is out first. She's the reigning Divas champion. She says she's going to be the longest reigning Divas champion in history, and eventually she will be.
Yep, that's true.
The mystery opponent is Layla. Catch me up on this.
Okay, here's the deal. Layla she got injured right around this time the year before. They had Karma put her out, actually. Um, she had kind of been getting a push. They were looking for a face of the division at this point. This is like the post Kelly times. And so they don't want it to be Beth, so they're looking at Eve Torres, and they're looking at like Beth a little bit, and Layla was one that they settled on for a few minutes. Like, she had come out of the tag team with Michelle McCool, so now she has Michelle McCool's theme song, and Layla has become a very competent wrestler, considering that she was very much just a dancer when she started, learned it from scratch, and like, honestly, she's way better than she has any right to be. She's completely forgotten about in the history of WWE at this point. But people seem genuinely pretty happy to see her. She gets a decent pop, not a great one, but like, people are like, "Oh, hey, Layla."
Hey, her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's been out with a knee injury for a while. The Bellas try twin magic, but Layla's ready for it, and she hits a neck breaker to win the title in 3 minutes.
It's fine. It doesn't wind up amounting to much. Again, we are like a year away from them just dumping the division completely and just giving the belt to AJ and just forever until Paige shows up to actually herald the dawn of a new day.
There's a quick interview backstage with John Laurinaitis where it's kind of offhandedly mentioned that Triple H wants to speak with them.
What do you suppose that's about?
Guess we'll find out, Cush.
Oh boy.
And it's main event time, Extreme Rules match, John Cena versus Brock Lesnar. Lesnar is out first. This is the debut of his UFC-inspired ring gear, the shorts and the MMA gloves, and the kind of little shoes.
I still remember being taken aback at the time that WWE agreed to let him promote Jimmy John's on his gear.
Yeah, that was something only he has ever been allowed to do, as far as I can think of. And Punk, I think, worked out a similar deal, and they wouldn't let him do it, and he was very bitter about it.
And it's just, if you ever wondered just how desperate WWE was, clearly the contract that Brock signed with them was literally just, all right, so we'll just give you everything that you've ever considered wanting, and you'll work for us sometimes, okay?
You'll get to wrestle 3 times a year. You'll get paid $5 million. You can take whatever outside bookings you want. You can go do UFC if you want to, and you can, promote outside companies on your gear. Like, anything you want to do, you can do it, Mr. Lesnar.
And literally, it sounds exactly like Lesnar was like, I don't fucking want to come, whatever, take it or leave it. And they're like, yes, but you know that you need us. And Lesnar's like, no, really, I'll just go back to my farm in Canada and fuck off forever. I have enough money. And they were like, oh shit, he doesn't need us. Take it all. He should have formed a union. It should have been Lesnar to be like, yeah, okay, but only if there's a wrestlers union.
God. Vince
would have been like, well, okay.
I guess I got to. Goddamn, pal.
Goddamn.
Heavy boos for Cena. He's got a chain around his neck. Remember that. That's Chekhov's chain.
Chekhov's chain.
Bell rings. Lesnar immediately double legs Cena, hammers him with elbows, and splits his head open.
This is the best start to a match maybe in wrestling history.
This is what they tried to do with Orton that one time, but Lesnar couldn't do it, probably because, I don't know, maybe his elbows were sweaty or something. He couldn't cut him, and he just ended up like elbowing him in the head for real over and over. Like, here, he hits him perfect with the edge of his elbow and splits his head. This had to be intentional.
And this was very much still during the time when like blood was an absolute no-no.
So
the only way they were going to be able to get away with doing it is if it were for real. So this felt like Cena goes to Lesnar, is like, hey buddy, you want to cut me open with your elbow there?
Yeah. And cuts the top of his head open.
This is one of the coolest, I mean, it's not a blade job, but this is one of the coolest like bleeding things I've ever seen in wrestling because it's so different. And like blood just like running down the side of Cena's face for like the entire rest of the match.
The referee forces Lesnar to break so the doctor can attend to Cena's cut. When they resume, Lesnar once again double-legs Cena and pummels him.
I think for like 10 straight minutes, John Cena gets not one punch in.
Yeah. I mean, so Brock Lesnar hasn't wrestled in 8 years. We're all kind of wondering, like, what's he going to be like in the ring? Is he still good? Is he going to have ring rust? Turns out he's better than ever.
And that's the thing too, is that he had when he was first around, he was basically trying to be Kurt Angle. Like he was trying to become this great wrestler. And like the domination part he had kind of gotten away from towards the end. Here they basically just said like eat him alive.
Yeah.
And Lesnar's like,
nothing.
okay.
Take from him everything.
And it's so compelling because we've seen John Cena vulnerable sometimes. But like that's the John Cena trope. Is that John Cena, he always comes back. He's never actually down and out. And like here, Lesnar takes him so definitively to the woodshed that you're just like, you've never seen anything like that. Imagine someone doing this to Hogan. Even to create a program with him. It would never happen.
Lesnar squashed Hogan in 2002, but it was old Hogan.
Yeah, I mean, when it was Hogan, was Hogan. Imagine someone doing this to Austin. Yeah. Like, it just... Austin sold for everybody, but nobody ever treated him like this.
Cena manages to get Lesnar up for the AA, but Lesnar slips out and hits a pair of German suplexes.
The beginning of the Germans.
Cena gets Lesnar with elbows and a shoulder block. The ref gets bumped. Why do you do a ref bump in an Extreme Rules match?
They do two.
Lesnar retakes control. He gets Cena in the Kimura. Lesnar gets Cena's chain, ties his legs together with the chain, and then hangs him upside down from the turnbuckle and kicks the shit out of him.
This was such a cool visual because it's not clean. It's not like it was a pre-planned thing where like he hangs him by his arms and like punches him in the gut. He hangs him so like Cena's like awkwardly clutching the rope so like the blood doesn't run to his head and like leak out of his cuts. And like Lesnar just like having a fun time just punching him in the stomach.
Lesnar picks up Charles Robinson like a sack of potatoes with one arm and throws him into the ring. Like, Charles Robinson isn't a very big guy, but he's got to be like 180 pounds or something. Lesnar picks him up with one hand.
It's the most impressive thing I've ever seen physically. Like, we've seen a lot of amazing things in wrestling. I've never seen anyone pick up another human being by the belt with one arm and just, like, heave them over their head with zero effort. Like... This is not Brock Lesnar at his physical peak. And, like, I couldn't do this to, like, a 4-year-old.
Lesnar hits Cena with the F5, but it knocks the referee down again. A new referee runs out to make the count, and Cena kicks out at 2. So Lesnar clotheslines the other referee.
Yep.
Lesnar throws the steps into the ring. He gets Cena in the Kimura once again. Lesnar manages to Cena lifts up Lesnar and slams him on the ring steps. He then goes for the diving leg drop bulldog, but he moves. Lesnar like stalks Cena as Cena's on the apron. Lesnar launches himself off the ring steps for a knee, but Cena ducks and he tumbles over the top rope. He just bites it.
This is one of the coolest things I've ever... Okay.
What is he thinking? This is insane.
I'm pretty sure that Cena was supposed to cut him off with a forearm here, because that's what happens immediately afterwards when they completely redo the spot 10 seconds later. Because Lesnar just pops right up and goes back and tries it again.
Yeah.
But the moment where Lesnar runs and jumps, I almost feel like Cena was like, okay, he's way too high. I can't catch him. Let's just duck and let him go.
And somehow he lands fine is the thing. He just kind of rolls through it. And he sells it really well. He sells it like he blew his knee out.
Well, this is a testament to him, too, because the way that you're supposed to have the ropes catch you is you catch it with your calf, and then you let it, like, momentum-wise, like, just kind of tilt you over, and so you can land on your back. That's exactly what he does. Like, it's picture perfect. It happens a lot faster and more brutally than I'm sure he wanted. But again, we're glossing over the fact that the stairs are in the middle of the ring. and he runs and jumps off of the stairs and leaps out of the ring. This man is 280 pounds. He like Superman flies out of the ring.
I will posit something. The Brock Lesnar character has actually had tremendous growth during the course of his career because he's stopped playing with his opponents. Like here, rather than just beat Cena, he toys with him. Like now Brock Lesnar just finishes people. Like he's just German suplex, F5, F5. Okay, I beat him. Like he doesn't toy around with guys anymore.
Well, that's the fascinating thing too, is that we're going to get to another Brock Lesnar versus John Cena match, which is basically this, except he never stops pressing the offense and he just beats John Cena to death and wins. And that should have been this. That match should have been this match. That's him learning from his mistakes. Just keep going. And then eventually the hubris comes back, and that's when Goldberg beats him.
Lesnar sets up to launch himself again. This time Cena's ready with the chain wrapped around his fist. He hits Lesnar with a loaded punch, grabs him, hits the AA onto the steps, and pins him for the 1-2-3. I could not believe back then that they put John Cena over here, and I can't believe it now.
It's one of those decisions that WWE is the only wrestling company I've ever seen that makes decisions like this. Decisions like, well, we could make $1 million, or I can act out some sort of personal issue through booking. Let's do that because I'll make $1 million anyway. That's the thing.
Every company in the world puts Lesnar over here. Like, there's just no question about it that, like, you've brought back this new huge star, and he's so hot, and he's better than ever. Like, how can you have him lose in his first match?
Let's tick off a quick list, okay?
Here we go. Okay.
Bill Goldberg lost in his first match. Scott Steiner lost in his first match. Oh man, I just had like 20 more, but I'm totally blanking. Obviously Brock Lesnar here lost in his first match back. Sting lost in his first match back. Any giant star they get must lose to convince Vince that he'll do business.
Yeah. So these are my couple theories on how they talk themselves into this. I think the biggest one is like some combination of they're testing Lesnar to see if he'll do business, and they don't want to put what they view as the UFC's guy over their top guy. Like, they want to prove their supremacy over UFC, even though Brock Lesnar is their guy now.
And let me say this. Enochiism, which I've referenced multiple times on this podcast, and which is, if one day I write a book, Enochiism will be the topic. Enochiism was very stupid, but this is stupider. Because Enochiism was all about, I'm going to go take a wrestler, and I'm going to have him beat UFC guys at UFC, beat them at their own game. This is, I'm going to bring a UFC guy in and beat him at my game, so he's worthless to me.
But he's a wrestler. He's an amazing wrestler. He's the best wrestler.
And it makes no sense. It only makes sense in the guise of, I think Vince McMahon spent his entire career expecting some sort of cosmic retribution for the Montreal Screwjob. And, like, if that was ever going to happen, this is when it was going to happen.
What, that Lesnar was going to come backstage and beat his ass?
Not backstage. What if Lesnar walks into the ring here and just eats Cena alive for real?
Shoots on Cena.
What the fuck is Cena going to do about it?
Nothing. Yeah.
What if he does what he did to New Japan? He literally just did this. Take their belt, hold them up for money. What the fuck are you going to do? Nothing.
So the other thing is Cena just lost to Rock, and I think maybe they got in their own heads about, like, oh, we can't have him lose again. That's too much. To me, that's when things get interesting, when you've pushed this character who's had so much success to this critical point where he's lost twice in a row so decisively. What happens next is a fascinating question. It's much more interesting than Cena winning again.
And we've come to a fundamental truth about wrestling. Like, the debate about whether wins and losses actually matter in wrestling has raged for a long time. Here's the truth. Wins and losses only matter if you don't have a storyline reason for the wins and losses. Cena can lose 100 matches in a row as long as there's a strong storyline reason why, and it's character progression and it's building to something, right? If he's just losing matches for no reason, then everyone loses confidence in him. If Brock Lesnar has no storyline reason to lose this match, immediately after this match, they basically act as if he won it. So he should have just won it. Like, that's when wins and losses matter, when the entire purpose of a match is for you to win or lose it.
Yeah. I feel like the ripple effects of this decision are massive because, like, this is why Brock has to break the streak to be special again.
Yeah, I mean, he stays over throughout the next year. Don't get me wrong.
Even though he loses, the even more inexcusable thing is they have him lose to Triple H at WrestleMania.
Loses to Triple H at WrestleMania.
Retired at this point.
Oh my God, that was so fucking... And they try to get his heat back at Extreme Rules. But at this point, we're at the part of WWE history. Nobody fucking watches Extreme Rules. 1 million people watch WrestleMania. 200,000 people watch Extreme Rules.
Yeah. Nobody cares about Extreme Rules. It doesn't count.
Oh my God. They only make those 2 mistakes with him. But they're massive. And imagine the heat he could have had if they don't do that. If he's just undefeated for 3 fucking years and then somebody finally takes down the beast. They could have built a new Andre. A guy who goes away from time to time, and when he comes back, he is an unimpeachable force. Until finally you pick that guy, whether it's Roman or whoever, and he beats him. And that guy's made for fucking ever.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
No.
Stop overthinking it.
I thought this was the best match of Brock Lesnar's career.
Up until this point, well, I mean, the Eddie match.
Yeah, that's a good call. That's probably a better match. But
this was just such a
I love
stunning...
this.
As an introduction...
We had not seen anything like this. And he doesn't really wrestle like this ever again. Because he starts doing the Suplex City stuff not that long after this.
He's trying so hard.
Yeah.
There's like an earnestness to it that's actually like kind of adorable. Where he's just like, I need to prove to every single person here that I'm still the fucking best, and I'm going to tear this house down, and I'm going to steal the match from Cena. It's going to be all about me.
All these fans were so mean to me when I left, and I'm going to prove to them that I love this business.
And he did. Did you see the comments that like Drew McIntyre made on the way into WrestleMania that like Brock Lesnar has like the greatest wrestling mind of anyone he's ever met?
It's actually fascinating.
The thing about Brock is that he's supremely lazy in the ring now. And there's a lot of reasons to dislike him, both as a person and as a performer. But at the end of the day, all of his matches land, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the only ones I've ever truly been disappointed in was like when he beat Ricochet in like 30 seconds.
But that's booking decisions. It's never him.
Yeah, that's not him. Like when he's given time, like his matches are good. Like Daniel Bryan, AJ Styles, even Finn Balor, like, yeah.
Yeah, the irony is that he might be the best-selling big man in the history of professional wrestling.
Oh, he's an amazing seller. Probably because he knows what it's like to actually get hurt.
Yeah, he just never does it. But, like, when he does, he's amazing at it. And, like, when he gets all puffed up and red and, like, sweaty, which is just what he does naturally, but it just contributes to it. Like, oh, my God, this match has gone 10 minutes. I'm not ready for that.
So Lesnar is escorted backstage by referees. Cena then, for some reason, gets on the mic and does a promo. This was very strange.
Steve and I have been trying to figure out a plausible reason for this promo ever since we watched the show.
We've been talking about this for a long time, I feel like.
It doesn't... Okay, so the crux of the promo is, well, I guess I'm going to have to be leaving here for a while.
Yeah. He says, my boss is going to make me take a vacation.
And I guess the implied idea is that since John Laurinaitis brought Lesnar in to make it more credible, John Cena is going to be punished for beating him.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like he's talking about John Laurinaitis.
No, it feels like he's talking about the fact that he keeps saying his boss is really strange.
Yeah, it feels like
He's saying he's going to get suspended because he bladed.
I would assume that's what I always figured, but it doesn't make sense. That doesn't happen.
No.
And Vince never suspended anybody for that. He just fined you like $1 billion.
$1 billion, yeah. What did he fine Batista? $500,000 or something like that?
Yeah. If I find Jericho like $2,500 and Batista like $250,000. And Batista was like, yeah, here's a check, brother.
Straight cash, homie. Cena says he thinks he's going to get sent home for doing this. He says this is CM Punk's town and it's also a great wrestling town. This really feels like a dark segment that made the air, and I can't really tell you why. The other weird thing is Cena, you can see he keeps like asking the referee how much time, like what time it is. Like it's like he's trying to fill time, and I don't know what he's filling time for because like the show has run a reasonable length. They're like at 2 hours and 50 minutes at this point.
What I want to believe is that this was supposed to be some kind of character moment that was originally designed when they thought Lesnar was going to beat him.
Yeah.
Where he was going to be like, well, guys, I think I'm going to have to go away for a while.
Yeah.
I don't really know who I am anymore.
I got to find my smile.
And so they kept the promo in, but now he doesn't have anything to fucking say. So This is a lot like when Sting cuts that promo at the end of Bound for Glory, where they're like, hey, Sting, are you going to retire? And he's like, well, got a lot to think about, I guess. Yeah. It's just weird. It's very weird.
So Lesnar threw a tantrum backstage over Cena's promo, but it was probably a work. Like I think it was
definitely a work.
It was just one of those things that, like when they had him throw the belt at Vince, like they'd love to do these work shoots with Brock. Oh, we're gonna work the boys. We're gonna get some heat.
Like why? Like what's the purpose of any of this?
The next night on Raw, Triple H would confront Lesnar and say, like, you're not getting any perks. You're not working a part-time schedule. Like, you work for me. Lesnar proceeded to beat him up and break his arm and quit the company.
That was cool as shit.
Yeah, it was.
Not only that, but like the debut of the Kimura as his like finishing move, where he's just like, yeah, I'll just fucking snap your arm. For like the next 6 months, that becomes like the crux of every show. Is
Shawn Michaels' arm, broke Triple H's arm again.
Yep, don't be mean. He was gonna like break Stephanie's arm at one point or something like that. It's just like, I'll just fucking break your arm. Who gives a shit? Can't stop me.
All right, we've got audience questions.
Ooh.
Steve Balthazar asks, was Punk's title run a letdown because they wouldn't fully get behind him like with Brett, or do you think he just really wasn't as good as he kept saying he was, or a little of both?
Okay, well, I may not be the person to ask about this because Brett's title reign also sucked. So, I guess, was that what they were trying to go for, like a Bret Hart type run?
What do you mean by a Bret Hart type run?
Just like a work rate based title reign. You know what I mean? Like, we'll just put him in there and let him have 20 minutes.
They never got behind him because, like, he doesn't really main event any shows until he turns heel and he's like working with Cena, because before then he's always in the mid card defending the title. So like they're not behind him, but also like I don't think he was that good. Like I don't think he really deserved to be in the main event over John Cena.
There's no point where babyface CM Punk deserves to be in the main event. Well, with one exception, that's the summer of Punk and they blew it. So I mean, it is what it is after that.
And it's just, he's never the same after that. Like, they missed their opportunity with him.
And I mean, maybe if that works and he's a lot hotter, like he's carrying a lot more like heat and like attention from the fans here, yeah, maybe. But he's not. So if I were WWE, I wouldn't have been pushing him any harder than they were either.
Super Nerd Daniel asks, so Brock Lesnar returns from his run in UFC, huge star, crossover appeal, legitimate tough guy aura, and in his first match back, he loses to John Cena. Do you think it was a means to humble him / punish him for having left in '04 when he had the rocket strapped to his back? We pretty much talked about this, but yeah, that seems like it was part of it.
Fuck his ass and make him humble, so said Vince.
As Kevin Nash once said, the way they do it, somebody says, oh, fuck that guy, and the other guy says, no, let's book him, then fuck him. And that is a wrap for Extreme Rules 2012. I'm glad we did this show. I think I liked it more than you did.
I realize now that I've spent the last however long this podcast has been going on for loudly ranting and complaining about everything on this show. Mostly that's because we haven't gotten to cover this time period very much. This sort of like in between times. We covered the summer of Punk, but I don't think we've covered anything else. So like I'd never gotten to talk about like Ryback and some other stuff like that. So I had a lot of shit on my chest to get off. I enjoyed a lot of parts of the show. I enjoyed going back to this time. And like the production quality is amazing, and this is before they like cut costs everywhere, so like it looks great. There's a lot of potential stars on the roster. They're just not quite getting it right, but it was refreshing to go back and watch this. And the main event is genuinely amazing. You have to go and watch this match if it's been a while. It's phenomenal. It's just everything about WWE during this point is just chipping away at me and making me angry. And this is when I was reviewing all of their pay-per-views. So literally, like, every month I had to watch this crap.
Oh, that was soul-crushing.
Just endless Sheamus versus Alberto Del Rio and endless nothing matches between nobodies who are being pushed wrong. And, like, the thousands and thousands of words I spilled about it. It all comes back and haunts my dreams. But that doesn't mean it's a bad show. It just means it hurt my psyche.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a time. This is the era of false starts to me because so many times it feels like they're on the brink of something really big. You know, Punk starts getting hot, Rock comes back, Brock comes back, and none of it ever really amounts to very much.
Yeah, take a shot every time as you listen through our archive that we talk about a show and say like, well, it really looks like they had something on the horizon here.
Yeah. And it never turns out they do.
No, they fucking don't. And here we are 8 years after this. And nothing's fucking changed except it's gotten worse.
Yeah. Okay. So we had talked about doing Judgment Day 2002 next week, but I think I might call an audible here.
Ooh.
You said you wanted to talk about Karma. You wanted to talk about Sin Cara. How about we talk about those things, and we can also talk about Christian winning the World Heavyweight title, about the fallout from The Rock and John Cena being announced for WrestleMania. We can talk about R-Truth's heel turn, and we can talk about the night U.S. Special Forces killed Osama bin Laden, and somehow The Rock knew before the CIA did.
What magical show had all these things?
Extreme Rules 2011.
This is definitely the first time we've ever chronologically done a year back, and I love it.
Literally, as we were talking about that stuff, I was like, oh, couldn't we do a show that has all those things on it?
Fucking right we can.
So yeah, I think we're calling this one in the ring. It's going to be Extreme Rules 2011 next week.
Love it.
So yeah, we'll get to cover all those crazy things I just mentioned and more next time. As always, thanks for listening. We hope you're staying safe. We'll see you again next time.